Today we're diving into a story with a connection you probably never saw coming, a link between ancient Greece and the birth of modern India. It's all about how a war for freedom in Europe, seen through the eyes of a poet, helped spark the dream of independence halfway around the world. So picture this. It's 1826 in Calcutta, right in the heart of British India. You have this brilliant, radical young poet, and he's not even 20 years old, who writes this incredibly explosive poem. But here's the thing. It's not about India. It's a call to arms for soldiers fighting in the Greek War of Independence. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why would one of India's first modern voices be so obsessed with a war happening thousands of miles away in Greece?
And this isn't just some dusty piece of history. Believe it or not, the year 2026 is going to mark the Bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of that very poem, addressed to the Greeks. So it's the perfect time to dig in and really understand how this old piece of writing helped shape the future of a nation.
Okay, so to get to the bottom of the why, we first have to talk about the who. So let's meet the man at the center of our story, the one with this very particular obsession. Here he is, Henry Louis Vivian Derozio. His life was unbelievably short. I mean, he died before he even turned 23. But in that tiny window of time, he became this absolute giant of the Bengal Renaissance. He was a poet, a revolutionary teacher, and one of the very first Indian writers in English to really articulate this deep, powerful desire for his country's renewal.
Now, the thing about Derozio is, he wasn't just some poet scribbling away in isolation. No, he was right at the center of this huge intellectual shift, working as a teacher in a place that became a kind of laboratory for brand new ideas. You have to understand, at Hindu College in Calcutta, Derozio was like a lightning bolt. Sure, his curriculum had the classics, Homer, Virgil, but he mixed all that with the revolutionary fire of the Romantic poets, people like Byron and Shelley. He wasn't just teaching books, he was teaching a whole new way of thinking. He pushed his students to question everything, to debate like their lives depended on it, and to get fired up about reform. This group became known as Young Bengal, and they were really the first generation to start challenging the old ways of thinking under colonial rule.
Okay, so this brings us back to Greece. For Derozio, Greece wasn't about old ruins or ancient myths. Nope. For him, it was a living, breathing blueprint for what it actually means to be free.
Yeah, people called Derozio a Philhellene, which is just a fancy way of saying he loved all things Greek. But his passion wasn't for old temples. For him, Greece was a living source of these incredible ideas: liberty, sacrifice, heroism. And as the modern Greeks were fighting for their independence from the Ottoman Empire, Derozio saw them as the living embodiment of those virtues, right then and there. Just listen to this line from his poem on the Battle of Thermopylae. It gives you a real sense of his fire. "Oh, who would live a crouching slave, while yet this earth can give a grave." I mean, think about that. He's saying that death is a better option than a life of submission. For Derozio, freedom wasn't some abstract concept, it was the very core of human dignity. This wasn't just poetry, it was a full-throated political and moral statement.
But here's where it gets really clever. All this passion for Greek freedom, it had a much deeper purpose. It wasn't just about Greece. For Derozio, it was a rehearsal, a powerful and frankly a safe way to start talking about India.
Check out this language from his address to the Greeks. He's urging them to fight, to remember their heroic past, and, this is key, to break the chain that enthralls. It's this universal call to shatter the bonds of oppression. Now hold on to that image, the chain. It's super important. Because then, you turn to his poem, The Harp of India, and bam! There it is again, the exact same metaphor. He describes India's cultural voice as silenced, bound by a fatal chain. This was absolutely intentional. He was using the same symbolic code for both places.
When you put them side by side, the strategy becomes crystal clear. Greece provided the perfect model, an ancient, glorious civilization fighting back against foreign rule. Derozio took that script and applied it to India, creating a new moral language to talk about its own situation. You couldn't just stand up in Calcutta and call for independence, that was impossible. But you could write a fiery poem about Greeks breaking their chains. It was a genius way to plant the idea of breaking India's own fatal chain.
So, did any of this actually do anything? What was the real-world impact? Well, yeah, Derozio's ideas didn't just stay on the page. They took root and started growing in the minds of a whole new generation. You can literally trace the chain of influence. It starts with his personal passion for Greek freedom. He brings that fire into the classroom at Hindu College, teaching his students to think in these new, radical ways.
Then those students, young Bengal, carry these ideas out into the world, creating a real movement for reform. And the end result? A totally new consciousness, the very ethical foundation that future independence movements would eventually be built on.
And this right here is the absolute key takeaway. Derozio didn't lead an army. He didn't start a political rebellion in the traditional sense. His revolution was intellectual. He made the very concept of a free, independent India thinkable for the first time in the minds of the country's youth. He laid all the moral and imaginative groundwork for everything that came after.
So what's the lasting legacy here? Why should we, today, really care about this young poet and his obsession with a war that happened 2 centuries ago?
I think this quote just sums it up perfectly. Derozio's genius was in translation, not of language, but of ideals. By making Greece speak in Calcutta, he taught India how to start hearing the first echoes of its own future voice, a voice that would one day demand its freedom.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. As we get closer to that 2026 bicentennial, it's worth asking ourselves, what stories from other times and other places inspire us now? What distant struggles for freedom are giving us a new language to understand our own challenges today? Derozio showed us that sometimes looking far, far away is the best way to finally see what's been right in front of you all along.